This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Joining us today is Darren Hazelwood, the CEO of Panther Metals. Hello, Darren. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning, Mark. I'm very well. The sun is blazing through the office windows, and it's a beautiful Easter weekend.
Well, that's certainly very nice, isn't it, for an Easter weekend? When the markets are closed, if we can get outside and enjoy the sun, then yes, at least we've got something to keep our minds occupied. So I wanted to just start this sort of interview / discussion off with a chart that you posted this morning where you said it's happening. And it was, of course, the commodities versus the S&P chart, the ratio there, where you can clearly see three spikes there in commodities at various bubbles or crises in the world in the past. And you can see that the commodities have actually been at an all-time low for an extended period of time, going right back to 1970. But there certainly looks like there's a start, perhaps, of a bull market. So I just wondered to get your thoughts on that, Darren, first of all.
Yeah, it's a chart that's been long used by investors as I think more as a bellwether as to where the sector's sitting and what's happening within the sector, and it's been clear by just the visuals on that chart of how low the sector has sunk in the investment world and in the investment sort of community. And what you're seeing the upturn. But what that upturn indicates for me is purely that the focus of the investment world is starting to turn back to commodities. And that's taken some time. And I'm still amazed that it's taken this length of time for that to start to happen. But once it does happen, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once you get a few people looking, that naturally brings in more and more. And it's one of the real true signals that the turn for the sector is happening right in front of our eyes. I strongly believe that we're off the bottom, and we're now moving forward. And once this goes, it will just accelerate. And that is a really good indicator.
And do you think then that the extended bottom, if you like, will lead to an even more bigger spike or a longer top?
It's got to. Just based on absolute fundamentals. We can review time and time again the coming crisis in the supply chain across just about every commodity, and you can see those in almost all forecasts. So as a result, it's naturally going to lead. That's going to lead to higher spikes. Look what happened with nickel. Was that just a short? No, the nickel price had been climbing for some time. And yes, people jumped on the back of it. And it almost exposed the position. But that's one commodity. Look at what zinc's been starting to do. Look at the commodities in the London warehouse and the COMEX. You know, these things are it's coming to fruition, and we're actually going into a period where we've clearly got financial pressures across the globe. My own feelings are that the governments are reasonably broke, if there's such a statement, because as we all know that they just turn the printing presses on. But that's that's what's adding to inflation. But the governments are going to invest in carbon neutral 2050 territory. And if the economy does drop off a cliff, that's where they're going to print their capital to absolutely pile investment into zero carbon 2050. And we sit at such a fantastic point within this, because we're going to benefit from the upside if the world finds a level and we keep growing and the debt gradually gets chipped away at, and then that would allow the natural growth, and the investment's going to go into those areas regardless. But at the same time, if it does fall off a cliff and we do hit major problems, governments are going to invest into the very sector and the very parts of the sector that require commodities where their supply chains dropping off a cliff. We win both ways. We can this will not fail now. The only thing that will fail is not making discoveries as explorers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do remember last time we spoke, Darren, you talked about the deal that you'd recently done, and you said it shouldn't exist anymore. So how are Panther then positioning themselves? Do you plan to make more deals or focus on the projects that you've got and to make those discoveries?
Well, look where Panther sits, you can look at the heightened geopolitical and inflationary pressures that we've seen this year. And as I've already said, that's driving the focus back onto commodities. But we're now seeing the evidence that the short-term hedge against inflation, but also the critical role that commodities are going to play in our fight to reverse the hundreds of years of environmental damage. And at times, for investors in the sector, and I can revert back to the chart that we discussed, it's really felt like a drip, drip, drip for explorers and the invested community within explorers. But before any dam breaks, you invariably get a leak, Mark. And we're now seeing those drip, drip possibly turning into something more substantial, a little streams coming out rather than drip, drip for commodities and investors. But for Panther, there's been a hiatus in the exploration space, and that I genuinely didn't think would ever happen, but basically due to the fundamentals, and that those include the massive underinvestment. But this hiatus has led me to be able to create a business with an extraordinarily strong portfolio, way beyond my wildest dreams 2.5 years ago. And I come to the market with Panther with an ethos of let's go to work, let's get on, let's really drive this. And we immediately ran into COVID, and that clearly had an impact on Panther and our ability to get on the ground. We couldn't get into Canada. We listed in January of 2020, for those that don't know. COVID really kicked in the March of that year. And then we had to wait over 18 months before we could even get our boots onto the ground in Canada. And that was last September. And then we drilled. So we drilled at 2 places. We drilled at Dotted, we drilled at Wishbone. So we've shown that once we've got that freedom, we can get out there and do it. But that we've also had to build up our networks within Canada to allow us to do that. But now I'm absolutely reverting back to that approach, to attack this. But now also that the markets are also working in our favour. The markets are going to reward success. Over the last couple of years, I think success has possibly been used as a leverage to sell into. Certainly after the spikes of mid-2020. And that's clearly coming to an end now. Real news, fundamental news is going to be reflected in the company's share price and giving that company the tools and more ability to kick on again. And that's exactly where I feel that Panther are. We've got our settled asset base. Look, it was imperative for me to build a model that was strong, and that's what we've done. I've got a decentralized model that takes away some of the corporate costs, and it allows us to invest more in the ground. We can park our investments now. Deals are done here, Mark. But I genuinely feel we are such a beautifully balanced company because of those investments. We've got probably 70% of our market cap tied up in investments, which is a great position for investors when you look at exploration portfolio. That's exactly what we're concentrating on. The sheer quality of the portfolio is incredibly exciting. And do I believe it contains a discovery? No, I genuinely believe there's a potential for multiple discoveries. That the investment community in London would be surprised at the reaction to our results from Wishbone. And the geological community really wants to know what are our next steps. To give you an example, the core at Wishbone is going to be central to one of the main stands at PDAC in June. Now, these intersects have made waves, and over at Dotted Lake, we've proved the system is mineralised. We await the other assays from the 230 metres depth, but we've proved that already. So we know that our targeting is absolutely spot on, and as we were going to strike a deal with Sheer Gold on the Manitou Lakes area, Manitou Gold sold its exploration assets in the area for 7 million Canadian, and that proves that, again, not only are we looking at the right areas, but we're able to deliver very, very good deals on the back of looking in those right areas. And it's done. I've shown across just about every single matrix that we can do and deliver as an explorer. Now we've got to get on the ground, and now we've got to prove this. And I was fully aware during our negotiations on Big Bear that this could confuse the market a little bit. You know, is our Panther a company that's just looking to divest its assets continually? And it couldn't be further from the truth. What Big Bear did, it enabled us an opportunity to hold on to a percentage of that property via our holding in Fulcrum and via the NSR on it. But it enabled us also to bring in some assets in an area that we're incredibly excited about. So yeah, the message is now it's reverting back to the original game plan, and that was to get our boots on the ground, Mark, and let's get making these discoveries.
Okay, well, Darren Hazelwood, the CEO of Panther Metals, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.